What I always point out is that trust can be very easily defined in a simple mathematical equation. And that is consistency over time.
Yeah.
When you become predictable, when you do the same thing consistently over and over again, you become predictable towards your partners. They want to know that, if when they send you an email, that you're going to respond. When they call you, you're going to pick up the phone, and so on. And if you keep doing that over a certain amount of time, then you build trust, because people know what to expect from you.
Welcome to Scaling Cyber, Mateusz. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here with you, Ignacio. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for the kind words, and for me it's very special because you are going to be the first guest that is not from the builder side of the things. You are in the distribution side, and the whole point was to bring a different perspective. So thank you very much for being the first on this.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that's an interesting perspective, and again, thank you for the invite. I think it's very, very important to have the view from the standpoint of a distributor, where you represent a vendor locally in a market, and you have a totally different set of skills and competencies and know-how that you utilize to scale the business.
Yeah, and that was the idea. You have a by now a long career in distribution, right? And specifically in cybersecurity. You have like experience really bringing to the market both European and American products, and what it really takes to scale them locally in a tough market, competitive market like Poland is. And why you chose to focus on distribution yourself? Now, what was that draw you into this part of the market?
There is a number of reasons. I really enjoy working with partners because they're smart. In general, partners are smart. They're going to be people that run their own businesses, that find a way to make money on their own, take responsibility for their business fully. So there's always a lot to learn from them, and they're very independent, fast on their feet. They understand their market. So, I personally, I always try to surround myself with people that are smarter than me, in many ways. So I love working with partners in that regard. The other thing is that a vast majority of my experience is managing people. Yeah, so I run my own teams, and managing partners is a wholly different thing. Yeah, because when you have an employee, you have a certain contract, and they have to a certain degree, of course, follow what you tell them to do, or as you guide them. Yeah. With partners, you need to be able to establish trust. You need to build the foundation of the relationship, and have them want to work with you. At any point during your cooperation, they can just say, "We don't want to do that anymore." So
it is really a dynamic that many scale-ups and startups don't really get when they start to build a product, right? Like how unstable a relationship with the local partners can be if you really don't build the strong foundations, right?
yeah, and I tell that a lot, especially when we start cooperating with new partners, and that's something I heard probably on another podcast or somewhere, regarding how to build a business. And for most people, it's obvious that everything relies on trust. What I always point out is that trust can be very easily defined in a simple mathematical equation. And that is consistency over time.
Yeah.
When you become predictable, when you do the same thing consistently over and over again, you become predictable towards your partners. and you want to be predictable for them, because they want you to have they want to have you in their comfort zone. They want to know that, if when they send you an email, that you're going to respond. When they call you, you're going to pick up the phone, and so on. And if you keep doing that over a certain amount of time, then you build trust, because people know what to expect from you, and that's a very, very good thing in terms of this in this level of cooperation.
Yeah, and that was something that I remember in a discussion previously with you. Like now the partners don't need the best product, right? They need a product that is good enough to do the job that they're supposed to. But then what they're looking for is this predictability that transforms into trust, and the different there are a lot of different moving pieces that need to be as important and sometimes more important than the product itself.
That is very true. And that's actually something I said during my recruitment process for IITD. You don't need the best-in-class product. You need a good product. It cannot be horrible, right? It has to be good enough. But you need a best-in-class channel, because in the end, the partners will be using it, utilizing it to make money, to make their living. Yeah. So they need this predictability for them to plan accordingly, to scale their own business. Yeah. So they need to know what to expect. And that's, I think, one of the key differentiators of a good channel is that it's predictable for the partners.
Yeah, and that brings me to the question, like, you talk about your recruitment or your start at IITD, right? And intelligent IT distribution. It's a fairly new player in the Polish market. And not only that, you're even, last year you started to go to the Baltics as well. Now, what is that you saw? What is that you saw when entering the Polish and Baltic markets that was missing there? What was the gap? Why IITD chose those markets to move to?
Well, in my opinion, a lot of things became very transactional in the Polish market. So, and we refocus when we talk about value, because we're value added, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, big buzzword, especially for distribution. Value added. Well, what's value? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The ultimate value is time. Right, that's how I define it. That's one thing we cannot put a price tag on, or if we do it, it's usually fairly steep, because everybody values their time very highly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that what worked very well for us, and this is something that I've learned very, very quickly in my first work in Dagma way back when I was just a junior sales guy, and I was taken into training by one of the senior sales guys, and he had one rule, like for his email inbox, one simple rule: every email gets answered within 2 hours, even if the answer is just yes, I got it, I'm working on it. Yeah. But that builds consistency, and puts a certain order into the chaos as well, because everybody knows how emails can how chaotic can they get, right? Yeah. So we focused on value. We focused on building a team that's going to be very highly competent. Now, this is something that's not happening very often when you build a new distribution business in a new country, right? When you're going into the market, usually what companies do, not only distributions but in general, you put in 1 or 2 people on the ground, some business developers, support them from the local office in a different country, see how it goes, see how it resonates, and then scale. The IITD investment was a bit different, because I have some experience with positioning teams locally in different countries. In my previous job, I managed several sales teams in different countries. The one thing that's a game changer for any market is to be able to position yourself locally. And by that, I mean speak the local language, be present locally, have localized content, understand the nooks and crannies of every market, some things that a person from outside isn't going to be able to do. There's always a certain cultural difference apart from the language, so we always have to be positioned locally. Cybersecurity is even more heavy on that because no other market that I've had the chance to working with relies on trust so much.
Yeah.
And usually you're going to tend to trust people that have, something in common with you, something within your comfort zone. So obviously, one of the key factors that define it is going to be that it's a person from your country that speaks your language, that understands your culture, and so on. So we started off with 5 people straight away, because the idea is to build the team that's going to be positioned locally, so that people can trust you. People know that they're speaking with a Polish office and they can get the support in the language they speak, conveyed in a way that they understand that is valuable for them. Yes. Yeah. And it worked great. Yeah. Because we got a very solid intake of partners straight away, just because we were able to meet with them in person, to be present, and to give them the feel that they're working with a Polish company.
Yeah, and that's when it comes to Central and Eastern Europe, right? It's an important topic because every country has a different language, and even if they are neighbors, the culture is very different. When you go from Croatia to Slovakia to Hungary to Poland, the culture, the way of working, the local companies, is even everyone is quite different. And how you see this part of the European market versus the Western part when it comes to adopting the new technologies, because you have a very advanced portfolio, from where I'm standing. You have global leaders like CrowdStrike, right? But then you have others that are more like newer type of solutions like Cribble, and then even more like a European specialist like Outkept and Labyrinth. So it's a quite wide portfolio, but relatively advanced compared to the more traditional, backup, email security, and other topics that traditional distributors usually have in their portfolios. So how the market responds to these more advanced type of solutions?
Well, basically, our market is a bit slower in adoption than the Western markets. However, in my opinion, it's not because of budget or awareness, but mostly about confidence and skills. Very often we come with, we encounter answers that some solution may be too advanced for some customer, because they're a bit hesitant on taking on a vendor that shows off logos of Fortune 500 companies and so on.
Yeah.
However, the discrepancy isn't very, very high. I would say it's slowing right now, especially in Poland, because Poland is very, very aware about cybersecurity threats. Given our geographical situation, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So it mainly comes to being able to properly convey the message of the value for a particular vendor, and that's hard. In some cases, especially for new technologies, some things that have no kind of benchmark. We have a few of those solutions that are fairly new in the market that companies are starting to adopt, that are not yet so widespread. Many of them, like proactive security, like threat intelligence.
And that's something that it always caught my attention when it comes to Poland, because Poland seems to have two speeds, two different paces when it comes to cybersecurity. Some of the biggest cybersecurity hubs for large companies are in Poland. Evident has a huge group there, Intel, Cisco. Many companies have like a lot of experts actually providing services, globally. But then when it comes to the traditional channel, it doesn't seem to be at the same speed as those global services. Like the services are very advanced. There is an incredible knowledge about cybersecurity in Poland, but the adoption of those new technologies seems to be going usually slower than that knowledge that exists in the market. Do you see it that way as well?
To a degree, but if we're looking at American companies like who are very fast to scale, then it's going to be difficult to keep up to those. Yeah, if we're differentiating between, let's say, American and European vendors, because European vendors are cool because they're much closer to the local problems. But in general, just because the American vendors scale so fast, you may feel that you're a bit behind. But that's okay. Because if you know how to properly convey the message locally, especially in the Polish market, that's very, very responsive. Once you're able to sit down with a partner and with a customer and explain the value, then it's very, very doable. But the trend is that it will always come from the West, because that's where that's the pinnacle of technology, let's say, and most of the most advanced solutions come from there, just by market share. But that's fine, But for example, one of our favorite technologies right now that we work with, Cribble, which is a tool for observability and for log transformation for analyzing your telemetry data and putting it in order. They have nearly 50 engineers hired in Poland. To develop the solution, to work on it, and are a part of creating this trend globally. So that's really cool.
That's many times I had conversations about Poland with people from Western European countries. They don't realize how many of the global solutions are actually being built fully or partially in the market, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk with you, because IITD is a very fast growing distribution company, and it seems to be, the moment that you start to execute, you really execute. But for that, you need to make choices, right? You don't have a portfolio of hundreds of products. You have a portfolio that is, you are building piece by piece, and you seem to be making decisions very, very thoroughly, really thinking what to add, why to add it. What is usually the process that you take to when you decide, okay, we need to add the new solution, why you are adding that solution, what are the sources of information, or how you work on that? You don't need to give away the secret sauce.
Okay. Okay. That's hard. We pick things that are cool.
Good. That's a good start.
No, you have to understand before we start. For a distributor, it's very important to choose the right product, not only based on the technology, but also how it's resonated with the partners, what kind of commitment from the vendor can be expected for that given market. So not just only that the fact that the technology is cool, but also how do we strategize it and how it fills into our current offering. One of the first things that we need to make sure of is that we're not going to cannibalize our own pipeline, right? Because contrary to what partners can do, where they can have, let's say, 3 different EDRs in their offering, we try to keep our portfolio consistent, because our commitments to our vendors are much stronger than what partners commit to the vendors, right? To the partners, it's not a religion. To us, it has to be sort of a religion. So when we commit, let's say, CrowdStrike, we're not going to be taking on any other endpoint vendor. So that's one thing. So first thing we look at is that out of the current technological stack, what are we lacking? that could be useful in the market. Second thing, and this is very, very important, is to gather feedback from the partners. Yeah, they are the ones facing the customers directly. So what problems are you coming across in the market? What do you need? What kind of technology would help you make your business better and your customers more secure? Yeah. Then there is the vendor side. What kind of commitment does the vendor want to do from themselves in that market? We would prefer that the vendor treats the market as something that's important for them and that they want to allocate resources to in various different ways. I'm not only talking about MDFs and marketing funding, but if they want to localize some stuff, if they want to participate in events, if they want to do some enablement programs together, stuff like that, because that's also going to be building credibility not only towards the customers but towards the partners, because the partners will often expect the vendor to be engaged in a certain degree in strategic deals and to have a presence. Yeah, because in the end, the customers will make a decision based on a number of factors. One of them being, how is the vendor positioned in the local market? One of the first things about the questions that customers ask: who else is using it?
Yes.
Yeah, and they will expect a local reference. Yeah, so it's
they don't
difficult
want
to,
some global Fortune 500 only, right? They want something that feels close to home.
Yeah. They're not going to care if Coca-Cola or Volkswagen or Tesla is using it. They will want to know if a local ministry is using it or if some Polish startup is using it. Yeah. So how we choose is, it's a myriad of all of those things. So ideally, you have all of them. Yeah. So you have a vendor committed to the market. It's a technology that resolves some existing problem or addresses some issue that's ongoing in the market or the cybersecurity landscape overall. Partners want to use it, or they've been asking for something like that. It rarely is all of them. Yeah.
And that's something. The role of the role of the value-added distributor is so undefined, when you look at from outside, because there are different types of experiences, right? Value is difficult to define, and there are these distributors that really wait until the trend is set to start to add a solution because they already have a position in the market, and there are others that are looking more to where the trend goes. That is really what you are doing. What are the trends that you see picking up more now in the Polish market? The topics that are appearing that a year ago they were not there, and you see that the market is maturing, or they're looking for new solutions, or they're looking for new things, from you guys.
Oh, fortunately, everything is going cloud native, and and customers are beginning to grow to that. And AI, yeah.
AI is the word these days, right? AI. We want AI for everything. Reminds me of the cloud. We want cloud.
It has to be a part of it, and it's going to be like this, because the adversaries, the threat actors, are going to utilize the same tools. So it's always going to be an arms race in that regard. And right now, what we're experiencing, and I think regarding threats overall, is a heavy emphasis on identity, and that's something we've been talking a lot about. This is you mentioned Outkept. I'll talk a bit about that, but not only, because I just don't want to limit ourselves to Outkept, but in general. identity is becoming or has already become a huge problem, right? One of the most popular CrowdStrike modules we're talking about with customers is identity protection, which is the module that protects your Active Directory environment.
Yeah.
And Outkept, which is a phishing simulation platform, which is really cool. Because it addresses something that's persisting right now, because the threat actors, they don't have to hack into your network if they can just log in,
Yeah, of course.
CrowdStrike releases their global threat report once a year, and there is a statistic over there. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's in the ballpark of about 80 something percent that of all of the attacks that they've monitored are used free of malware. You can simply, for example, steal credentials. Yeah. And so protecting that part of your environment, which is in part educating people how to handle their credentials in a responsible way, but also taking preventive measures, and also being proactive about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to talk about it because that puts the problem of your cybersecurity between the monitor and the chair.
Yeah.
So that's not something that's something you can have a limited influence over, because
it's not a traditional model, right? It's not a traditional model.
You can control. You can control your systems, obviously, to a nearly unlimited degree, right? You decide your technological stack. You decide how the data flows. You decide on your security solutions. Yeah, you have full control. You cannot ever have full control over a user and what they do. You have to actively work to educate them to properly set up their privileges, but they will be very, very creative in measuring your success.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true, and that's an interesting topic, because identity is clearly like a trend now that is picking up, and it's really changing the model of security a lot. And because you need to consider the cloud, the local identity, the mobile identities. It's really a complex topic compared to others that we face in the past.
Yeah, and AI security is going to become a very, very important thing, because not just a few months ago when we were at Falcon, CrowdStrike was presenting their tool to protect. They acquired, I believe it was Pangea, the tool to protect your MLMs, because people, and nearly all of us are doing that right now. They're just putting a lot of sensitive information into AI to help them work, and that data isn't monitored at all. Like, what happens to it afterwards? It's and usually those
went into the matrix. Right?
Yeah, and oftentimes these are going to be private accounts, right? You're going to have your ChatGPT account in your personal email, and you're going to put in some company stuff over there. If that account gets compromised, then a lot of stuff that you put in, well, all of the stuff that you put in there, it's going to be some risk of exposure, right? So, so it is very, very important to have that addressed.
This is exactly one of the reasons why I wanted to have you in the podcast. That you have a very good understanding of the market, where it's going, how it's working. You are seeing it from the ground, but you also follow it because of the vendors that you work with. And something that is interesting for me about your view is that you can really compare like the American way and the European way. And even how the American and the European way translate to an important market, because you had previous experience working with European vendors like Storm Shield or ESET in the past. Now, like a lot of experience working with American vendor like CrowdStrike, and it's like, how do you see the differences on how the vendors are ready to tackle this the cybersecurity landscape overall, because CrowdStrike is extremely active. They're a behemoth. They're like really a huge execution machine. I don't see a European equivalent, even if we all try to see it. What are your views in this American versus European these days?
What do we want to do first? Because there's technological differences and there is business differences.
We can focus on both, and we can start from the technology side and take it to the business, or like the other way around.
Oh, well, from the technology standpoint, I think that in general, just the American market is very it's huge, right? And it's not as segmented as, for example, the European market. So that will always give the American companies kind of a much easier path to growth. Right? Because they will have a much larger audience and much more data they can analyze to properly scale. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, for example, the European vendors will be able to be much more focused on the local markets and understand them a bit better. So that's also a good thing. But that usually takes more precedent and for public customers. It's not, for the most part, for me, it hasn't been like a super defining factor about what kind of solution a customer is going to choose based on the country of origin. Mainly because American solutions are trusted overall, same as the European ones, I would say. As long as it's one of those two, then you're fine. Yeah. What problems I'm seeing with American solutions, for the most part, is that they've been, at least the ones that I've worked with, is that they've been struggling to adopt the distribution model.
They don't go in direct first, right? Yeah, they go direct and then they jump.
Yeah, they won't need that kind of model in their local market, obviously, because they're the ones conveying the value. They don't need anyone to convey the value for them. But then you hit a roadblock in a local market that doesn't speak your language, and you end up needing someone to do it for you. Yeah. And so that's something that I see vendors struggling with a bit, because they have to kind of give out a bit of control towards a different company. You have to build trust. You have to prove yourselves to them that you can do it, because they're going to give you your baby, and because obviously all of the vendors will care about their business very deeply, which is great. But also, the way the technology performs in a local market is going to be defined by the sales. Like, sales is king. There is one king in the jungle, and that's sales. You can have the best technology in the world. You can have the best technology in the world, and it may never leave your garage because you're unable to sell it. It's not going to sell.
Just a pause. This is a moment that everyone that works for sales and is listening to this can go and ask for a raise, right?
Yeah, if they sell, if they're good at selling. Yeah,
if they're good at selling.
Not very easy finding good sales guys, by the way.
No,
but that's beside the point. My point is that it's very important to understand that there's a lot of work to do when conveying the message of the value of the vendor. Especially under new. There's a lot of work to be done around it, and it has to be done correctly, with a high degree of competency of expert knowledge, not only sales but technical as well. But those always go in hand, because otherwise you're going to fail. Because and that also comes back to what I said at the beginning: best channel, okay technology, like right now. And maybe I'm going to take a small swing at ESET here, so sorry ESET. ESET is a good solution. It's not the best solution for endpoint protection in the world. It's not. But they have the best channel in the Polish market. Like the ESET distributor, they're great. Yeah. So they have the majority of the market share. Not because the solution is the best.
And I agree with that. I know,
Because
like,
the channel is great. Yeah.
we know each other because of ESET, right? I was there and so on. For me, I always liked this. I use your phrase because for me it's a great example. Like, it's always a combination, but at the end of the day, like, the channel is what will make you win, no matter what the technology. And that's what is interesting for me when I see like this American versus European, situation. It's like, the Americans move fast, because they go direct. The Europeans are a little bit slower. They have less resources. Technology-wise, maybe they start in a similar level. Sometimes even in some technology areas, Europeans might be better. But then when it comes to the execution, Americans just go and they do an amazing job on that. And that's something that I see the European vendors need to stop being so much in love with their technology and understanding that technology is just one part of the puzzle, and work closer with their channel partners, distributors, and the market to find a way to compete in a stronger way, right?
Yeah, and I think that has to do a lot with most of us, well, not me, but most of the people in the market being technical. This thing where something is obvious to you, and you immediately think that it's also obvious to the person you're talking with. Yeah, there's a certain like horizontal obviousness, and very often you get lost in that. What you said about being in love with your technology. Yeah, you have to put in a lot of into perspective in terms of that, because the fact that you have an idea about something and how it's supposed to work, it doesn't necessarily have to be the way for someone to see value in it. Yeah, someone may see value in it for a number of different reasons. Yeah, when you put that technology out there and see how it's starting to perform, then you will be able to gain much more understanding as how, like, where the value comes from. Yeah. So, and that also, kind of brings us to sales, where they have to be able to do it properly.
If you could, and that's an important topic, because at the end, the only way to know that is being out there and talking with the channel and the customers, right? And if you could give one advice to European builders, you work with some of them, so you're probably giving them advice regularly. What will it be? How they
yeah, if they take it.
Yeah, like the important thing is, you are there on the ground. In many cases, you are the face, the hands, the voice of vendors, for the Polish market. So, what will be the advice that you will give, like, those that are trying to scale European cybersecurity, solutions, to win markets like yours?
I think that from a business standpoint, when and if you're certain that you want to scale to a certain country, never assume the distributor is going to do everything for you. And don't get starstruck by the size of the distributor. Yeah. So those are the two most different, most important things. Is if I were a vendor, I would probably prefer a smaller distributor that's going to commit and do a lot of groundwork. So because building a business is, you have to put in a lot of work, man. You have to make hundreds of calls, hundreds of meetings, presentations, POCs. It doesn't sell itself. Even if it's the best tech, it doesn't sell itself. You have to have people to do it, So if you want to go locally to a market, you find a distributor that is going to commit to you, that they have a plan, that they want to put people to, they want to allocate resources to. Yeah, like we allocate product managers to products. We allocate technical guys to products. Every product that we put into the market, we want to have the local know-how. We don't want to be forward managers. Every time a partner asks us a question, we don't want to go to the vendor and ask them, "Hey man, what does that do?" We have to have the answer. Yeah. And when you have like a huge distributor that has 50 plus products in their portfolio, and they're just going to add in one more, and you're going to think, oh, but they have a huge channel, so we're going to have all of that access. Bullshit.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way, because nobody's going to talk about it, and nobody's going to sell it, and it won't sell itself. You have to have people selling it, making calls, talking about it. Don't fall in love with your own tech. Don't assume that when you love it, everybody else is going to love it.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good chance that a lot of people will tell you that it's horrible. Yeah. So you need to have people to convince them otherwise. So like, we're the smallest distributor right now in every country where we operate in. Yeah. But we focus on quality. Yeah, we take less technologies. Like, when I started off with my 5-people team, we took on 2 new vendors. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because we wouldn't be able to support more with the degree of expert knowledge that I would expect from the team. Yeah. So that's a piece of advice. And before you do all that, make sure you do want to scale that way, because a lot of businesses have problems with trying to spread themselves too thin, and that's another issue unto itself. But
and starting distribution is really is starting to work with distributors is a commitment that you cannot expect is going to drive results in 6 months, right? It's a commitment. It's a one-way street that you need to take it and make sure that is important. Otherwise, you burn yourself and you create a lot of issues later.
Yeah, but the distributor has to commit. That there has to be 100%. There has to be 100% commitment from 2 ends. So on one hand, you want the distributor to commit, but on the other hand, you need to commit to that market as well. So you need to invest in it. It's not giving someone a contract is not an investment.
I agree.
You have to be prepared to invest into the market. You have to have a war chest. Put in some money. And invest with the help of that distributor to target proper events, proper partners, prepare some MDFs, some incentives that will help position the solution in the market. It's the only way it's sustainable. Yeah. You would have to have an incredible position in the market globally to just have distributor killing for you to get the contract and committing 100% without any external support.
Yeah, and there are only a few of those cases. And when we talk about IITD in particular, and already starting to wrap it up a little bit, so what is next for you guys? Because you say that you are one of the smallest, or if not the smallest, in the markets where we are present, right? But you are very active. You already have a good reputation. You have a great name. You are adding new capabilities and new products. So Poland, was a first step out of the home market, Baltics. So what is next for you? What are the focus areas at the moment?
Grow everywhere. World domination.
World domination. That's good. That's good.
Now, smart scaling. Smart but fast. So we're opening offices in different countries, depending on where our distribution contracts take us. Obviously, I have some experience with scaling business in Europe, so that's fun. But for me personally, my number one goal is to properly grow and expand the portfolio and the partner network in Poland and in the Baltics. Mm-hmm. Poland is the 6th economy of the EU. We just started 2 years ago. Actually, when we're recording this, I'm about 3 weeks short of my 2nd anniversary in IITD. Yeah.
Wow.
And in that time, we've built a team of now about 12 people. We've introduced 2 totally brand new vendors to the IITD portfolio, not something we previously had from other offices, but 2 brand new ones. We built a huge network of dedicated partners that, trusted us, some of them from day one, basically. We've built a significant pipeline. We started closing our first deals. So it's been a wonderful journey so far. And the whole team, I'm very grateful to each and every one of them for the commitment that they've made. And, it's a lot of hard work, a lot of groundwork, where you have to really drive around, pick up the phone, meet with a lot of people. So the amount of, we did 40 or something events last year with partners.
It's unbelievable.
I'm just talking offline events. I'm not counting webinars. Just events with partners, industry events. Yeah. So it's a lot of work, man. So right now, we just want to keep the pace. We already announced some new partnerships this year with new vendors for Poland. So a lot of new cool stuff is coming. So right now we want to focus on working more closely with our partners. The relationships that we've built, we want to foster them. We want to make them grow. So the partners that are already working with us, we want to keep enabling them so they become more independent, because that's a long and ongoing process. Yeah. And it's also very hard. So I sometimes I joke with my partners is that I really don't want you to call me, because in an understanding that you're enabled so well that you're fully autonomous and you don't need me.
You don't need me.
But when you call me, I'll always pick up, right? Yeah. So that's the goal for as many partners as possible, for them to stop calling me. Yeah. But obviously, jokes aside, my team has been very focused on being responsive towards them, and that's I think one of the, if not the key factor, that is the biggest component of our success, is that every time you call IITD, somebody picks up. And it's not like a switchboard, but you have access to people, and that's one thing that resonates a lot with them, and that's something that we're definitely going to foster going forward.
That's great to hear, because for me it's unbelievable. The journey of your journey and IITD journey so far is in less than 2 years you build a name, you build a strong commercial success, and the future is about this smart scaling. That I actually like the name so much. Maybe I will change the name of the podcast. It was actually an interesting name, smart scaling. But really, Mateusz, this was great. I really appreciate that you joined and you brought all these insights, because the whole point is to share different views about the scaling cybersecurity. And I wanted to make sure that a story like yours, that in such a short period of time achieves so much visibility and success, will also get the space as well. Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for more. Hopefully we get to talk again in a year or in a few months, and we can talk about how far the scale took us. Yeah.
That will be the plan. I'm a big fan, and I'm going to continue to keep an eye on how things go. Thank you very much, Mateusz. Awesome. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. It's been a wonderful pleasure.